Welcome to Democratic Television, a program of the Santa Clara County Democratic Party that brings insights, perspectives, and attitudes of our always thoughtful Democratic guests. Today we have a real treat. Steve Chessin, one of the founders of Democratic Television, made time in his busy schedule to be on the show. Steve, thanks for being on Democratic Television.
You're quite welcome. It's not often that I get to sit on this side of the camera.
That's true. It's different.
Definitely different.
But I don't notice any beads of perspiration, so you're handling it well so far.
I guess I'm just holding it all inside.
You're a good man. But we'll talk about that.
Okay.
So before we get into content and what you do and why you're a Democrat and what that scarf around your neck is and what it symbolizes, a little background. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? Interesting hobbies?
Okay. You have to excuse my coughing. I have a little bit of allergies. I grew up on the East Coast. I was born in Baltimore, or Balmer, as they say it. And when I was 6 months old, I moved my family to New York and grew up on Long Island.
Oh.
Got to pronounce that G. Town called Great Neck. And graduated from Great Neck South Senior High School in 1968. Went to college at MIT. Graduated with a degree in physics from MIT in 1972. Worked for a year after college before I came out to California in 1973 to do my graduate work at UC Berkeley, which is where I got my PhD, also in physics.
So you went into physics thinking you were going to be a physicist.
This is very true.
Are you a physicist?
Not anymore.
Okay, so you were for a while.
Well, while I was a graduate student in physics, I was a physicist.
So what did you do with that?
That year that I had between, I worked for IBM. And I started out as what they call a student or non-student supplemental, which can only work for 6 months. And at the end of 6 months, they either had to hire me or fire me, and they liked the work I was doing, so they made me a regular employee, which meant that when it came time to leave to go to Berkeley, instead of just quitting, I could take an educational leave of absence. So I got a 4-year educational leave of absence from IBM to get my PhD at Berkeley, except it took a lot longer than 4 years. I kept getting extensions to my leave. I ended up getting 9 years. My leave got extended for a total of 9 years. Halfway through the PhD, halfway through my writing halfway through the PhD program, when it came time to do my dissertation, I realized that I liked physics, but I wasn't in love with it. And if you're going to make a career out of it, you really have to be in love with it. I mean, why would I knock myself out to get a postdoc position someplace, to knock myself out to get an assistant professorship someplace, when I wasn't really enjoying it all that much? The part about physics that I really liked the most was when I had to use a computer to do something. And I'm very good with computers. Like I said, I worked for IBM for a year. And so when they wouldn't extend my leave of absence anymore, I still had a year left of writing my dissertation. I went back to IBM, finished my dissertation while I was back at IBM, got my degree, and continued with my career as a software engineer.
So did you go back to New York to work at IBM, or did you work at IBM out here in Santa Clara County?
The first summer of grad school, I worked in Palo Alto for IBM. I got a summer job, as it were, since I hadn't actually started my research yet. So I was commuting from Berkeley to Palo Alto every day. I worked at the on Page Mill Road, or actually California Avenue. There used to be an IBM facility there. But then when I did finally come back off my leave of absence, the people I'd worked with had moved to the Santa Teresa laboratory facility. So that's where I worked for IBM, was down there for about a year and a half. When I finished my degree, I wanted to get back closer to the Berkeley area or whatever. Also, I learned about the Unix operating system while I was at Berkeley, and I wanted to do something with that. And there was a group that IBM was putting together, again, in Palo Alto. So I moved up to Palo Alto. I forget exactly what year that was. 84. Moved up to Palo Alto and worked for IBM. And got in a group porting Berkeley Unix to IBM hardware, and discovered that I wanted to work more closely with hardware folks. But to do that, I would have had to move to either New York or Florida or Texas, which is where the hardware is all done. And I didn't want to do that, and I got an opportunity to joined Sun Microsystems in 1988 and worked with hardware people.
So you were on the ground floor pretty much.
Well, they got started in '82, so I was there 6 years later.
Okay.
But still, I was employee number 5,642 for Sun. So,
do you want to repeat that for those that are taking notes?
well, it won't do them any good anymore because Sun got bought by Oracle, which is where I am now. And I have a different employee number with Oracle. And it's definitely not in the 4 digits. But I'm basically doing the same job that I was doing I'm doing the same job at Oracle that I was doing at Sun. Same job, different CEO, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
So fascinating, but I don't know you as a physicist or a software or hardware engineer. I know you as a very committed Democrat.
Right.
So you haven't shed all the story.
How did I get active in politics?
Please.
Yes. Well, when I was at Berkeley, this was in the late 60s, early 70s, and there was a lot of student protest about the war in Vietnam. And I was actually a bus monitor on the March on Washington, November, it's either 71 or 72, I forget which year that was. We did a demonstration in Washington against the war in Vietnam. And then when I came out to Berkeley, Berkeley's a very political place. While I was a graduate student, I didn't do that much. But then I started doing volunteer work for KPFA, the Pacifica Foundation, the radio station up there. My then girlfriend was active with the Berkeley Tenants Union, so I got active helping them. We got
tenants' rights stuff.
Tenants' rights stuff, yes. Berkeley had a strong rent control measure. There was a landlord-backed organization that wanted to gut Berkeley's rent control measure. We wrote a measure to make it stronger, put that on the ballot at the same time. I was the treasurer of that campaign. Not only did we defeat the landlord-backed measure, but ours passed. So it was the whole strategy of using a countermeasure. Gives people something to vote for. Because they, oh, this is a rent control measure, even though it guts it, but it says rent control, they'll vote for it. But if you put another measure on the ballot at the same time, G is good, H is a hoax, which was the theme of the campaign, then you can defeat the bad one and maybe even get the good one passed. So that got me a strong taste for electoral politics. Then, like I said, I moved down to the Palo Alto area. I got active in Lance Weil's congressional campaign. Against Ernie Connew, I think that was. And I got mentored by Lainey St. Marie and Dolly Sandoval and Charlene Beckwith. And we lost that campaign and because the Democratic Party hadn't put any money into it because they'd written this area off as a Republican area. And that got me angry. And when I get angry, I take action. And I heard about the State Central Committee, and you had to collect signatures to run for State Central Committee, and I know how to collect signatures. That's what I did in Berkeley a lot. So I got active with the Democratic Party. And then when in 1990, when Lainey resigned from the County Central Committee, she suggested that I be appointed to take her place, which happened. And then in 91, then I ran and got elected, and you asked me to become secretary of the county committee in 1991, which I did, and I was secretary of the county committee for 8 years. And in 1995, we started this TV show, and the rest is history, I guess.
Well, let's talk about the TV show because we have been doing this for a long time. A lot of other county parties don't do shows.
Right.
And it seems to me it was easy enough to get this going once you found out how to get to the community access folks working with the local cable channel.
Right, right. Well, I'd been at some Democratic Party meeting, and there was some other county that had a TV show, and they showed a tape of their TV show. And I was talking to Melody London, who works on this show, and she had a friend, Siobhan O'Leary, who had done public access TV, and Siobhan did a lot of the groundwork and she was actually going to be the producer of the show. And then for personal reasons, she wasn't able to do that, so I became the producer of the show because we were going to do it at KMVT in Mountain View, and I'm a Mountain View resident. Right. So it's a lot easier if you're a resident of the city in which you're doing the show.
So you and Melody are the two originals, I guess, with me that have been doing this show for at least 6 or 7 months now.
Right, right.
Yeah, it's working out pretty well.
Yeah, yeah. To do the show, I had to get trained, of course, and the rules back then were you had to work on somebody else's show before you could do your own. So I did the audio for a show called Healthy Bites, which is a cooking show.
Oh.
The great thing about the cooking show is when the show's over, you get to eat the props.
Oh. Here, not so much.
Not so much. I wouldn't want to chew on these flags.
No.
Or the campaign signs.
Yeah, dust is an issue, I think, for most of us.
Yes.
Not that we like to think of the Democratic Party in dust.
No, 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 we're good.
Except we like to leave people in our dust.
The opponents we leave in the dust, yes.
Totally,
Yes.
totally. So you've been doing Democratic television for a long time now. Have you been able to inspire other people to say, you guys ought to do this? And how does the age of the internet and YouTube and all that factor in? Because it is a different world now from when we started.
It is definitely a different world. There are a lot of people who produce television in their kitchen or their bedrooms, and they post it up on YouTube. We get our shows up on the website. I'm no longer the producer, by the way. I retired a couple of years ago and turned it over to Keith Statenfeld, who's been doing an excellent job.
Excellent job.
Excellent job continuing the production of Democratic television. Yeah, and I don't know if we want to get into a discussion about the future of public access cable TV, but people do have a lot more opportunities, a lot more channels, if you will, available to watch and produce TV shows, like you said, YouTube and similar methods.
Yeah, and it seems like with YouTube, more and more people are realizing that the equipment is almost minimal. Training can happen either through the manual, the equipment you buy, or I think community access stations allow you to check it out if, as you've been trained, you get the training and know what you're doing with it. I mean, because the equipment isn't cheap.
Yeah. Well, I was just actually watching on my computer I guess you could call it a podcast, if you will, but video, and they produce it in front of computers. You know, because computers have cameras, and so they record the video, and they were wearing mics and they had headphones. But basically, a distributed production because people were the guests were in a different, two guests each in a different area from where the two hosts were, and they were each in a different area as well. It's pretty high production values. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for that. So sometimes I get concerned about the future of public access cable because I think we can do a very good job with professional equipment, much better than you can with a computer or a cell phone.
Yeah, that's an important point. Although certainly revolutions have started with those cell
phones.
Oh,
definitely. You don't need high production values.
But production values do help.
Yes, they do.
Good. Well, why don't we take a little break? Okay. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the issues that you think are important now in 2012, and maybe talk about that scarf around your neck.
Yes, thank you.
We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Assemblyman Paul Fong. I want to welcome you to the Santa Clara County Democratic Party, the party of inclusion and diversity. You can join a variety of clubs and associates of the party, the Silicon Valley APA Democratic Club, the African American Democratic Club, this Latino Democratic Caucus, the Peninsula Democratic Coalition, Dawn Democratic Activists for Women Now, a variety of associates and clubs that you can get involved with. Please join us, and you can call us at 408-445-9500. Thank you very much.
Welcome back to Democratic Television and our guest, Steve Chessin. Steve, great to have you here.
It's nice to be here.
It's good to have you. This is the second time we've had you on the show. We don't often invite people back, so we appreciate your clearing your calendar, as they say.
Well, I haven't beaten Joe Simidian's record yet.
Not yet. So one of the things I always like to find out are what were the early influences in someone thinking there's a world out there larger than me as a kid. Many times we find people's parents or others in their lives played a big role. What were the influences in your life back in the formative years and maybe up through today?
Well, I don't remember my family having political discussions around the dinner table, but I do know that on election day when I was a little kid, my mom would bring me into the voting booth. This was in New York, where we would use those lever machines. And she would even allow me, she'd say, if you pull this lever down, and then that lever down, and then that lever down. So she would tell me which levers to pull. And then there's the big red lever that you get.
So you wielded a lever of power.
Yes, I guess you could
at
put
a
it
young
that
age.
way.
I remember Mario Savio talking about the levers of power.
The gears and levers, yes, exactly. Yes, so I knew about voting. And then, like I said, I grew up in high school and college. It was the Vietnam era.
Yeah.
And so got interested in political protest. And then, like I said, in Berkeley. But my parents, like I said, we didn't really we were a solid Democratic family. Although I do remember when I think I was 5 years old, and I told my parents, because it was 1956 election, and I told my parents not to vote for Adlai Stevenson because he was going to make kindergarten all year round or something like that. That was the rumor going around the 5-year-old crowd.
Those Eisenhower people would do anything to suppress the vote.
Yes. Anyway, but fortunately that didn't stick in terms of my anti-Stevenson bias.
Good.
Yeah.
So what other influences your folks at an early age? And
well, again, in college, and I like I said, I went to MIT, and at MIT is where I got introduced to a different way of voting. Because to elect the campus representative, well, Cambridge, Massachusetts uses proportional representation to elect their city council.
And I know that's been an important issue for you. So
Right.
you saw it back then in practice.
Exactly. And I got intrigued by these bulletin board, or the bulletin boards, not bulletin boards. What do you call those advertising things? Billboards, thank you. Billboards, sorry. I'm getting old. Anyway, billboards would say, vote for Jane Smith #1 for city council. And so people would ask you to rank them first on their ballot because Cambridge uses a ranked voting system similar to the instant runoff voting or ranked choice voting system that they use in San Francisco, Berkeley, Oakland, and San Leandro. So I got introduced to that concept, and we used that also to elect our student government at MIT. When I came out to UC Berkeley uses the same system to elect the student government there. And it just seemed to me a much better system because you get a better reflection of the electorate in the elected body than you do with single-member districts.
Can you explain, even though you're a physicist, can you put that aside and explain how does it work and why is it advantageous? What's the difference?
Well, let's start with single-member districts, because that's what people are used to today. When you elect a state assembly, for example, 80 people from single-member districts, in order to get the majority, 41 seats of that assembly district to get control, you need to win in 41 of those districts. You don't need to win in all 80. You only need to win in slightly more than half.
Across the state of California.
Across the state of California.
Yeah.
To win in a district, to guarantee success in a district, you only need to get slightly more than half the vote.
Right.
So half of the vote in half of the districts is 25%. So 25% of the voters properly distributed can control a legislative body and outweigh the desires of the other 75% of the population. That doesn't seem fair to me. With proportional representation, 25% of the electorate will get 25% of the seats, no more, no less. 75% of the electorate will get 75% of the seats, no more, no less. So you get an electoral body, an elected body that reflects the makeup of the electorate. And that's, to me, that strikes me as more lowercase d democratic.
Well, let's talk about politics today. I think most people feel that in the state and certainly in Congress, we have a very dysfunctional system.
Yes.
People are loggerheads. They take advantage of the need to compromise, and they say we won't, and therefore we have stalemates. And I think it's just driving cynicism amongst people and potential voters, and more people are getting away from political parties and I think the political process. Do you have a solution to that in mind?
Well, the national level is interesting. The founders deliberately set up divided government, where you have a president who has veto power and then you have a Congress which passes laws. And they could be from different parties, although the founders originally didn't want political parties. As a matter of fact, if you go to the the Federalist Papers, I forget whether it was Madison or one of the others, but wrote against what they called factions, which is what their term was for political parties. But it's, to me, that was an unreasonable expectation, because it's quite natural for people to band together when they have common interests to advance a common cause. And so you expect people to form political organizations and to advance their interests. I think it was John Adams said that a legislative body should in principle be a mirror of the population, as it should reflect their interests. And so had the tools for proportional representation existed back in the 18th century, we probably would have had proportional representation written into our federal constitution. But those principles and tools weren't developed until the 19th century. So you'll see most of Western Europe uses proportional representation to elect their lower legislative body. We're one of the few Western industrialized countries, us and Canada and the United Kingdom, that use single-member district first-past-the-post elections.
Well, you mentioned that there were a number of cities in the Bay Area, at least, and across the country that have instant runoff voting.
Right. Instant runoff voting is a replacement for both a plurality election, where whoever gets the most votes wins, even if it's not a majority, and it's also a replacement for two-round runoff, which we use, for example, for Board of Supervisors in Santa Clara County, excuse me, where if no one gets a majority in the June election, the top two vote getters face each other in November. With instant runoff voting, you can get a majority winner in a single election, because you're choosing your runoff choice at the same time as you're choosing your first choice. The ballot that you have is a ranked ballot. You put a number 1 next to your first choice, a number 2 next to your second choice in case your first choice can't win, a number 3 against your third choice, and so on down the ballot. And then the way they count is very simple. You sort the ballots out by first choice. If someone has a majority, that person's the winner. If no one has a majority, you eliminate the person who came in last, and then you resort the ballots. If your first choice is still in the running, your ballot stays with your first choice. But if your first choice was eliminated, then your ballot moves to your second choice. Now, if someone has a majority of the ballots, that person wins. Otherwise, lather, rinse, repeat.
So we've had this experience, and I know there was controversial election results in Oakland.
Yes.
And now people are saying, well, I supported the concept. Now that I've seen it in practice, I'm not for it anymore.
Right.
So I'm sure you have thoughts on that.
Well, you know, elections have winners and losers. And sometimes when people lose, they lose gracefully. And sometimes when they lose, they don't lose so gracefully. And instead of blaming the fact that their opponent ran a better campaign or they ran a lousy campaign, if there's been a recent change in the rules, they will blame the rules. So you had a race in Oakland. The 3 leading candidates were Don Parada, who's well known in Democratic Party circles, the city council member by the name of Jean Quan, and a city council member by the name of Rebecca Kaplan. And for a variety of reasons, there was a definite anti-Parada feeling within Oakland. Among first choices, Don Parada got about 34% of the vote. Jean Quan was 9 points behind with 25%, and Rebecca Kaplan was third. But they used instant runoff voting. And what Jean Quan had done in her campaigning is she knocked on every door, including if the person had a lawn sign or a window sign for one of her opponents. And she said, look, I know you're supporting so-and-so, but let me tell you about myself, and I hope you'll consider ranking me your second or third choice. And she also told her supporters towards the end of the campaign to rank Rebecca Kaplan as their second choice, because she said it's important that we keep Don Parada out of the mayor race, out of the mayor's office. And when the Kaplan campaign heard that, they started telling their supporters, well, gee, Jean is cross-endorsing me informally, so I would like you to rank Jean second, me first and Jean second. Some people think that there was an actual formal agreement between the two candidates, but I haven't seen any evidence of that. Anyway, at the end of on the end of election night, Parada was in the lead. But for a variety of reasons, they didn't run the instant runoff tally right away. They waited till Friday. So they had 4 days of newspaper coverage of Don Parada having a 9-point lead over Gene Kwan. Then they ran the instant runoff tally on Friday.
Got it.
And lo and behold, Kwan squeaked out a 51 to 49% victory over Don Parada.
Enough to win.
Enough to win, but it was a very close race.
Yeah, okay. So we're almost out of time now. I think there's probably more to say about this. And the context of this is, what can we do to bring the public back, Democrats and declined estates and Republicans, to feel better about the process and to get our numbers up higher?
Right.
We don't have time for that now, but we do have time to talk about that thing around your neck.
Okay.
That scarf.
Well, this scarf, my daughter made me this scarf. One of our Democratic activists, Kristen Johnson, runs the Ohlone Art Camp every summer, and my daughter usually goes. And the project last summer was to do a hand-painted silk scarf. And without telling me, at the end of the week, my daughter brought home this scarf.
Wow, I'm hoping that gets picked up. It
I'll
says,
hold it up long enough.
Proud Democrat.
Right.
And there's our sign, our symbol, our motivator.
And when she brought it home and showed it to me, I was so impressed that I promised her I would wear it to every single Democratic Party event I attend.
That's great.
And I've been doing that.
Okay. Steve, if people want to get hold of you, learn more about some of these issues, do you have a number or website?
I'm president of Californians for Electoral Reform, where we work on instant runoff voting and proportional representation. Our website is www.cfer.org, and there's more. We have local chapters around the state. People can go up there and
go to the website
and get our information.
Okay. Steve, thanks for being on Democratic Television again. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching DTV. Give us a call at 408-445-9500 or visit our website, www.sccdp.org. Help make a difference, and we'll see you on the campaign trail.